The elevator climbed silently toward the penthouse, carrying Rachel Thompson and the scent of pepperoni pizza through the gleaming tower that pierced Manhattan's midnight sky. Her delivery jacket hung loose over tired shoulders, and her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor. She'd been running deliveries for 6 hours straight, but rent was due in 3 days. Michael Alced stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights blur through his whiskey glass. The penthouse felt hollow despite its luxury. Marble countertops, designer furniture, art worth more than most people's homes. Yet none of it filled the emptiness that had been growing inside him for years. At 32, he owned half of Manhattan, but couldn't buy back the one thing he'd lost. The doorbell's soft chime echoed through the silence. Michael set down his glass and walked to the door, expecting another faceless delivery person to hand him food he probably wouldn't eat. When the door swung open, time collapsed. Rachel's brown eyes widened in recognition, and the pizza box nearly slipped from her trembling hands. 12 years vanished in an instant. She saw the boy who'd kissed her under Brooklyn streetlights, who'd promised forever before his father shipped him away to boarding school in London. Now, he stood before her in an expensive shirt, barefoot in a penthouse that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. "Rachel," he whispered, her name breaking like a prayer on his lips, linked hard as if he might disappear. "Michael." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken years. He looked older, sharper around the edges, but his eyes held the same intensity she remembered. Those storm-gray eyes that once made promises under starlit skies. "I didn't know you were back in the States," she managed, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I live here now. You deliver pizza?" The question hung in the air. She bristled slightly, lifting her chin with the pride she'd learned to carry. "Yes. Got a problem with that?" Michael shook his head slowly. "No, I just didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I," she replied. Though what she meant was, "I didn't expect to see the boy who broke my heart standing in a palace while I'm barely keeping my head above water." She held out the receipt with practiced efficiency. 1880. He reached for his wallet, never taking his eyes off her face. He handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change." Rachel hesitated. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's gratitude." "For what?" "For showing up at my door tonight." The words settled between them like a bridge neither was ready to cross. Rachel looked at the money in her hand, then back at his face. Behind him, she caught glimpses of the life he'd built without her. Clean lines, cold perfection, everything money could buy. "Will you come in?" he asked suddenly. "Just for a few minutes." "I know it's strange, but it's been 12 years, Rachel." Everything inside her screamed to leave. She had 3 more deliveries, a son sleeping at home, and bills stacked on her kitchen counter. But something in his voice, something raw and honest, made her pause. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo through both their lives. The penthouse felt like a museum around them, beautiful and untouchable. Rachel set the pizza box on his marble counter and took in the space that spoke of success and solitude. Every surface gleamed, every piece of furniture looked like it had never been used. It was stunning and heartbreaking all at once. They sat across from each other on his pristine sofa. The distance between them measured not in feet, but in years of silence. "Long have you been here?" she asked. "For years. I came back after my father died." His voice carried old pain. "Took over the company's New York operations. And you never looked back?" Michael tilted his head slightly. "I tried not to. But some things don't stay buried." Rachel looked away, afraid of what she might see in his eyes. "You disappeared, Michael. One day you were there, and the next you were gone. No goodbye, no explanation. My father sent me to boarding school in London. I didn't have a choice." "I was 17. I waited," she whispered. "Oh, I waited for letters, for calls, for anything. I wrote you every week for 2 years. His voice grew quiet. "My father destroyed every letter before I could send them. I didn't find out until after. He died." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. She'd spent 12 years believing he'd simply forgotten her, moved on to bigger and better things. I thought you stopped loving me. I never did, she laughed. But there was no humor in it. And what now? You see me delivering pizza and want to rewrite the past? No, he said, softer now. I just want 5 minutes of truth. Rachel's hands tightened in her lap. Truth? Fine. I have a son. He's 12. I'm divorced. I work 3 jobs, and I'm still barely keeping everything together. My mother is sick, and the treatments are bankrupting us. I live in a 12-room apartment in Brooklyn where the heat barely works, and the walls are wrapper paper thin. That's my truth. Michael. His expression didn't change, didn't show pity or judgment. What's his name? Lucas. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. You always loved that name. The memory hit her unexpectedly. A warm summer night when they were 17, lying in the grass behind her grandmother's house, talking about dreams and futures and the children they'd never have together. She'd said she loved the name Lucas. He'd promise a date if they ever had a son. That's what they'd call him. I never married, he said quietly. I dated, went through all the motions my position required, but none of them were you. Stop. Rachel stood abruptly, her heart hammering. This is insane. 12 years, Michael. 12 years of building different lives, becoming different people. You can't just, what if I could help? With your mother's treatments, with no... The word came out sharper than she intended. I don't want your money. Why not? Because every time someone helps, they expect something in return, and I have nothing left to give. Michael stood slowly, careful not to move too close. What if I expected nothing? What if I just wanted to help because it's you? She walked to the window, staring out at the city that had swallowed both their dreams and rebuilt them into something unrecognizable. You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up in my life with your penthouse, in your good intentions, and think you can fix everything. I'm not trying to fix everything. I'm just trying to understand what happened to us. Rachel turned to face him. What happened is life, real life, with real consequences and real people who get hurt when promises get broken. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier, more honest. Should go, she said finally, moving toward the door. Michael didn't try to stop her, but his voice followed her across the room. Rachel, do you believe in second chances? She paused. With her hand on the doorknob. I used to, then let this be one. She looked back at him one last time, memorizing the way he stood there in his expensive solitude, still waiting after all these years. Then the elevator doors closed between them, and she was falling toward her real life, her heart beating with a rhythm she'd thought was long dead. Rachel didn't sleep. She lay on her worn couch in the Brooklyn apartment, still in her delivery jacket, staring at the ceiling as her mother's labored breathing drifted from the next room. The radiator clanked its familiar rhythm, and down the hall, her 12-year-old son Lucas slept peacefully, unaware that his mother's world had tilted off its axis. She kept seeing Michael's face, the way his eyes had held the same intensity from their teenage years. Kept hearing his voice when he said her name, like it was something precious he'd been saving. By morning, exhaustion had settled into her bones, but she pushed through her routine. Lucas bounded into the kitchen, all messy hair and boundless energy, chattering about a school project while she packed his lunch with careful precision. Mom, you look tired, he observed, studying her with those intelligent brown eyes that reminded her so much of herself at that age. Just a long night, sweetheart? Lots of deliveries? She kissed his forehead. Have a good day at school.
After.
Lucas left. Rachel checked on her mother. Grace was awake but pale, the latest round of treatments leaving her weak and nauseous. Rachel helped her with medication and a light breakfast, all while calculating the bills in her head. The insurance covered some of the treatments, but not enough. Never enough. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Rachel opened it cautiously, and her breath caught. Michael stood in the hallway, looking different in jeans and a simple sweater. No driver, no entourage, just him holding 2 coffee cups and a small paper bag. What are you doing here? She asked. You forgot your change, he said, holding up the folded $100 bill from the bag. I thought you might need some real coffee. She wanted to be angry, but something about seeing him in her world, looking almost normal, softened her edges. My son's at school. My mother's resting. You have 10 minutes. He stepped inside, and she watched him take in the peeling paint, the threadbare furniture, the careful way she'd arranged their few belongings to create warmth in a space that had seen better decades. She braced herself for judgment, for that look of pity rich people got when confronted with real struggle. But Michael's expression held only respect. You don't have to pretend, she said defensively. This place is falling apart, I know. I'm not ashamed. Shouldn't be ashamed, he replied, setting the coffee on her small table. You're raising a child, caring for your mother, working yourself to exhaustion. You're the strongest person I've ever known. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She studied his face, looking for the lie, but found none. I used to dream about this, she said quietly, surprising herself. You and me, together in the city. My architectural designs in every skyline. You still want to be an architect? Want and can afford are different things. She sat down across from him, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Dreams don't pay for medicine or rent or groceries. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence, and Rachel found herself remembering why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. Not because he was wealthy now, but because he'd always been able to sit with her in the quiet moments, understanding without needing to fill every space with words. I named him Lucas, she said suddenly, because of that night in the field. Remember when we talked about the future, about the children we'd have someday? Michael's eyes softened. I remember. See mine? The question hung between them, loaded with 12 years of possibility and pain. No, Rachel said gently. The timeline doesn't work. Lucas's father left before he was born. But I gave him the name because it was the only piece of our dream I could keep. Relief and sadness crossed Michael's features simultaneously. I'd like to meet him someday, if you'd let me, maybe she said, and it wasn't a no. From the bedroom came the sound of her mother coughing, harsh and prolonged. Rachel's face tightened with worry she couldn't hide. How bad is it? Michael asked quietly. Bad enough that I've sold everything worth selling. It's bad enough that I work 3 jobs, and it's still not enough. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm losing her, Michael. There's nothing I can do to stop it. Without thinking, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. Hush. The touch sent electricity through both of them, a reminder of what they'd once been to each other. Let me help. We've been through this, not with money. With time. With support, with whatever you'll let me give. Rachel looked down at their joined hands, his larger and softer than hers, unmarked by the kind of work that left permanent calluses. Why? Why do you care what happens to us? 'Cause when I saw you last night, it was like breathing again after years underwater. Because I never stopped wondering, what if? 'Cause you're here, and maybe that means something. She pulled her hand away, but gently. 1 coffee, she said. Tomorrow. Just coffee. No expectations, no grand gestures. I need to think. Michael smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the boy who'd stolen her heart at 17. Just coffee. He agreed, but as he left, they both knew it would never be just anything where they were concerned. The coffee shop in Brooklyn Heights was exactly the kind of place Rachel remembered from their youth. Mismatched chairs, local art on exposed brick walls, the smell of fresh pastries mixing with jazz music that played just loud enough to create intimacy without demanding attention. Michael had chosen well. He was already there when she arrived, seated by the window, staring out at the street with that same contemplative expression she remembered. But now she could see the weight he carried, the loneliness that success hadn't been able to cure. You came, he said, standing as she approached. I said I would. She pulled off her coat, noting how he dressed down a gainsable black sweater. No expensive watch. Nothing to emphasize the distance between their worlds. They ordered drinks and settled into the comfortable rhythm of 2 people learning to know each other again. The conversation flowed more easily than either had expected, touching on small things at first, the neighborhood, the weather, the way the city had changed, but gradually opening deeper doors. Tell me about Lucas, Michael said eventually. He Rachel's face softened the way it always did when she talked about her son. He's brilliant and stubborn and too wise for his age. He loves to read, builds these elaborate Lego cities, and asks questions that make me realize how little I actually know about the world. He sounds like his mother. He's better than me, kinder, more optimistic. He still believes people are fundamentally good, that things work out the way they're supposed to. She paused. I hope he never loses that. Maybe he won't have to. Maybe some people get to keep their optimism. Rachel studied Michael's face. What about you? Did you get to keep yours? He was quiet for a long moment. I thought I had. Built a successful company, made more money than I knew what to do with. Proved my father wrong about everything he said I'd never achieve. But somewhere along the way, I realized I was building someone else's definition of success. What's yours? Sitting here with you, he said simply. Having this conversation. It's feeling like myself for the first time in years. The honesty in his words made her chest tighten. She'd spent so many years angry at him, then forcing herself to forget him. That she hadn't prepared for this version of their story, one where they were both broken in different ways. Where time had taught them the cost of the choices they'd made. I was married for 3 years, she said suddenly, to a man who was nothing like you. Safe, practical, the kind of person who made lists and paid bills on time and never made promises he couldn't keep. What happened? He wasn't you. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she felt her cheeks flush. I mean, he was reliable and boring, and I thought that's what I needed. You can't build love on the absence of something else. Michael leaned forward. Rachel, don't, she said quickly. Don't make this about us. I'm just trying to explain why I understand why you never married. Sometimes the wrong person feels right because they're safe, but the right person feels wrong because they're dangerous. Is that what I am to you? Dangerous? She met his eyes. Terrifying. They sat with that admission between them, both understanding that they were approaching something that couldn't be undone. Rachel pulled a folded paper from her précis napkin. Sketch she'd drawn during her break the night before showed a small house with a garden, simple and warm. It's the kind of place where a family might actually live instead of just exist. Lucas asked me once what my dream house looked like, she said, handing it to him. This was the best I could do. Michael studied the sketch with the kind of attention he usually reserved for $1 million blueprints. It's perfect. Just a doodle. It's honest. It's home. He looked up at her. Do you still have other drawings? Some, mostly sketches, on whatever's handy when inspiration hits. Grocery lists, napkins, the backs of bills. She laughed self-consciously. Not exactly a portfolio. I'd like to see them sometime. Why? Because they're yours. Because you still create things even when the world tells you there's no time or money or point in creating them. Rachel felt something crack open in her chest, some wall she'd built around the part of her that still dreamed. Can't just show up and make me believe in things again. I'm not trying to make you believe in anything. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that maybe some dreams are worth fighting for, even if they come later than we planned. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the window with winter's first real promise. Rachel watched the flakes. For a moment, thinking about time and second chances, and the way some people came back into your life when you needed them most, even if you weren't ready to admit it. I have to pick up Lucas in an hour, she said. Can I walk with you? Hesitated, knowing that introducing Michael into her son's world would change everything. But looking at him now, seeing the careful hope in his eyes, she realized that everything was already changing, whether she allowed it or not. Okay, she said. But he doesn't know about you. About us. He just knows you as the customer from the other night, I understand, as they left the coffee shop together. Walking through the gentle snowfall toward the one person in the world who mattered more to Rachel than anyone else. Both of them understood they were crossing into territory that couldn't be mapped or controlled. They were choosing to trust each other with the most precious things they had left. Lucas Thompson burst through the school doors like sunshine breaking through clouds, his backpack bouncing as he scanned the crowd of waiting parents. When he spotted his mother, his face lit up with the kind of uncomplicated joy that reminded Rachel why every struggle was worth it. Mom? He ran to her, then stopped short when he noticed the tall man standing beside her. Oh, hi. Lucas? This is Michael, Rachel said carefully. He's a friend of mine. Michael crouched down to Lucas's eye level, something that immediately earned him points in Rachel's book. Nice to meet you, Lucas. Your mom tells me you're quite the architect with Legos. Lucas's eyes brightened. I'm building a whole city right now. It has a hospital and a school and even a little pizza place because Mom always says the best neighborhoods have good pizza. Michael glanced at Rachel with a smile. Your mom is very smart. I'd love to see your city sometime, if that's okay. With you? Really? Most adults just pretend to be interested. I'm not most adults, Michael said, and something in his tone made Rachel's heart skip. I work with buildings for a living, so I'm always curious about other people's designs. As they walked home through the falling snow, Lucas chattered between them with the easy confidence of a child who'd never known a stranger. He asked Michael about his job, told him about his favorite books, and somehow managed to extract the information that Michael had grown up not far from where they lived now. Did you know my mom when you were kids? Lucas asked with the directness only children possessed. Rachel tensed, but Michael handled it smoothly. We went to the same high school for a while. Your mom was the smartest person in our class. She still is, Lucas said loyally. She helps me with all my homework, and she knows everything about math and science, and she draws the coolest pictures when I'm sad. I'd like to see some of those pictures, Michael said, looking at Rachel. They're just silly doodles, she protested. Mom's always saying that about her art, Lucas said. But they're not silly. They're beautiful. When they reached the apartment building, Rachel hesitated. Inviting Michael up would cross another line, bring him fully into their world. But Lucas was already tugging on her coat. Can Michael see? My Lego city, please? He said he builds things too. Michael looked at Rachel, leaving the choice entirely to her. In his eyes, she saw understanding, patience, and something deeper that made her chest tight with possibility. For a few minutes, she said, the apartment felt smaller with Michael in it, but not in a bad way. He admired Lucas's elaborate Lego, construction with genuine enthusiasm, asking thoughtful questions about the design choices and praising the creative solutions. Rachel watched from the kitchen, seeing her son bloom under the attention of someone who truly listened. Her mother emerged from her room, moving slowly but determined to meet their visitor. Grace Thompson had once been a formidable woman, and even illness couldn't entirely diminish her presence. So you're the young man who's been making my daughter smile? Grace said, settling into her chair with careful dignity. Mom, Rachel protested, but Grace waved her off. I'm Grace Thompson. And you are? Michael all said. Ma'am, it's an honor to meet you. Grace studied him with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Rachel tells me you knew each other in high school. We did. Your daughter was remarkable then, and she's even more remarkable now. Something in his tone seemed to satisfy Grace. She leaned back in her chair. Lucas, why don't you show Michael your room? I'd like to have a word with your mother. After they'd gone, Grace turned to Rachel with a knowing look. That's him, isn't it? Yeah, the boy you never talked about but never forgot. Rachel sank into the chair beside her mother. It's complicated, Mom. Love usually is. Simple isn't. Always better, sweetheart. Sometimes the complicated things are the ones worth fighting for. From Lucas's room came the sound of laughter and animated conversation about building techniques and architectural principles. Rachel realized she couldn't remember the last time her son had sounded so engaged with an adult who wasn't family. When Michael emerged 20 minutes later, his expression was thoughtful. He's incredible, Rachel. Brilliant and kind and curious about everything. He's my whole world, she said simply. I can see why. They stood in her small living room, surrounded by the life she'd built from scratch, and Rachel felt something shift inside her. This wasn't about the past anymore. This wasn't about the teenagers they'd been or the dreams they'd lost. This was about the people they'd become. The possibility of building something new from the foundation of what they'd always meant to each other. I have to ask, she said quietly, aware that Lucas could hear from his room. From us, because I can't afford to get this wrong, not with him involved. Michael moved closer, close enough that she could see the sincerity in his eyes. I want to be part of your lives, in whatever way you'll let me. I want to help with your mother's treatments, with Lucas's education, with your dreams of becoming an architect. Not because I think you need saving, but because loving someone means wanting to share their burdens and their joys. Michael, I'm not asking for forever right away. I'm asking for a chance to prove that some things are worth waiting for, that some people are worth coming back to. Rachel looked around her small apartment at the life she'd built with determination and love and sheer stubborn will. Then she looked at Michael, seeing not the wealthy stranger who'd opened his door 3 days ago, but the man who'd crouched down to talk to her son, who'd listened to her mother's stories, who'd held her hand across a coffee shop table like it was something precious. "Lucas," she called. "Come here for a minute." Her son appeared in the doorway, still clutching a complicated Lego creation. What would you think, Rachel?" said carefully, if Michael started coming around more often. "If he became part of our family?" Lucas looked between them with the intuitive wisdom of a child who'd learned to read the currents of adult emotion. "Are you going to make Mom happy?" he asked Michael directly. "I'm going to try very hard to do that," Michael replied seriously. "And you won't leave?" "Not if your mom will have me." Lucas considered this gravely, then nodded. "Okay, but you have to learn to make pancakes. Moms are terrible." Rachel protested, laughing despite herself. "It's true," Grace called from her chair. "They're like hockey pucks." Michael grinned, and suddenly he looked exactly like the boy Rachel had fallen in love with 17 years ago, full of mischief and possibility. "I make excellent pancakes." "Then welcome to the family," Lucas announced with the kind of certainty only children possessed. Later that evening, after Michael had gone and Lucas was asleep, Rachel sat with her mother in the quiet apartment. "Are you sure about this?" Grace asked softly. Rachel thought about the question seriously. She thought about trust and timing, about second chances and the difference between safety and happiness. She thought about the way Michael had looked at her son, not as an obstacle, but as a gift. She thought about the dreams she'd packed away and the possibility of unpacking them with someone who'd never stopped believing in her. "No," she said honestly, "I'm terrified, but maybe that's how you know it matters." Grace smiled and patted her daughter's hand. "Sometimes the scariest thing and the right thing are the same thing." Outside, snow continued to fall over Brooklyn, covering the familiar streets in something new and clean. And for the first time in 12 years, Rachel Thompson went to sleep, believing that happy endings might actually be possible, even for people like her. 6 months later, Rachel's first architectural commissione, small community center funded by an anonymous donor, broke ground in the very neighborhood where she'd grown up. Lucas started at a private school where his brilliance was nurtured instead of overlooked. Grace's treatments continued with the best doctors in the city, and her prognosis had improved dramatically. And every Sunday morning, the apartment filled with the smell of Michael's pancakes and the sound of a family that had found its way home to each other. It's not because it was easy, but because it was right. Asterisk, the end deal liked this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.